J.D. Vance dropped a bombshell in his latest interview, claiming the U.S. borrows money from Chinese peasants to buy what those same peasants churn out. A jab dripping with condescension that paints them as country bumpkins beneath his lofty perch. The sheer audacity floored me, a mix of disbelief and bewilderment washing over me as I processed it. Here we are in the 21st century, and a vice president dares to sling such crude barbs at another nation's people. His words oozing a smugness that's as tasteless as it is tactless. Forget racial slurs for a moment. This is just plain bad manners. Diplomacy tossed out the window like yesterday's trash. There he stands, decked out in a suit, spouting off like a backwoods loudmouth who never learned to keep his trap shut. Vance's own story isn't exactly a tale of silver spoons and city polish. Born in 1984 in Middletown, Ohio, a Rust Belt speck on the map, he grew up dirt poor, his family a mess of divorce and dysfunction. His mom lost to addiction while his grandmother scraped by to raise him. After high school, he enlisted in the Marine Corps for 4 years, shipped off to Iraq, then clawed his way to Ohio State University on the GI Bill, wrapping up a degree in politics and philosophy before elbowing into Yale Law School. In 2016, he penned Hillbilly Elegy, spinning his rags-to-riches climb into a tearjerker that sold over 3 million copies and landed a Netflix film deal, catapulting him into the spotlight as the voice of the downtrodden. The irony bites hard. The guy who rode the woes of rural folk to fame now struts around in tailored suits, sneering at peasants like they're beneath him. He milked the underdog glow to climb the ladder, only to turn around and slap labels of inferiority on others. A betrayal so slimy it turns the stomach. Beneath that polished veneer, he's still the kid with mud on his boots, pretending he's not. Even if Vance wants to take a swing at China, dragging peasants into it is a cheap shot he should have skipped. His veiled jab at China's expense ignores the American farmers, the rednecks of the Rust Belt who propped up Trump, the very folks he ought to glance down at. These are people, often short on book smarts and global savvy. Easy marks for the con game Trump and Vance have been running. Trump's Make America Great Again racket piled tariffs sky high, only to get a swift kickback from China. Their 34% retaliatory tariffs hitting April 10th, choking U.S. soybean and pork exports. Capital Economics pegs a 12% drop in American agricultural exports for Q1 2025, leaving farmers staring at busted cash flows while government aid remains a distant mirage. These redneck backers are the ones facing a real hillbilly elegy now, not some overseas scapegoat. Vance preens on stage, pontificating, but his policies are screwing over the loyalists who cheered him on, a twist so rich it's almost poetic. If he had any guts, he'd focus on bailing out his own countryside kin instead of lobbing insults across the Pacific. Vance is a weasel at heart, flip-flopping like it's an Olympic sport. Back in 2016, he was a never-Trump diehard, branding the man cultural heroine and fretting he might be America's Hitler. Fast forward to 2021, with a Senate seat in sight, and he's swallowing those words whole, groveling for Trump's endorsement. By 2024, Trump taps him as VP running mate, and Vance morphs into a lapdog, tail wagging for the boss. Lately, he's been snarling on the global stage, sinking his teeth into Ukraine's Zelensky on February 28th in the Oval Office. A public mauling for the cameras that reeks of desperation to prove his loyalty. The display's so ugly it's earned him a stench that follows him everywhere. A reputation in tatters. What right does this spineless opportunist have to mock anyone? He sold his soul for a title, yet still has the gall to yap like he's above the fray. Now, those Chinese peasants he's smirking at, their goods flood the world, rattling elites like Vance to their core. China's grit and ingenuity pump out everything from cheap clothes to cutting-edge tech. Stuff Americans can't quit buying. Phones and shirts stamped, made in China. The IMF clocks China's 2024 export share at 15.3% of the global pie. Numero uno. Meanwhile, Vance and his suit-clad cronies are the real culprits behind America's industrial rot. The dollar's reign as the world's currency handed Wall Street vampires free rein, bleeding Rust Belt factories dry while they raked in billions, then pointing fingers at China for the mess. Those Chinese peasants built the planet's slickest infrastructure, high-speed rail stretching over 40,000 kilometers, highways webbing the nation, prices so low they'd make an American weep. Compare that to the US, where bridges creak, rails rust, and folks drown in medical debt. Vance snickers at peasants, but China's tech surge, chips, AI, 5G, is nipping at the heels of India and the US alike. These financial leeches see their throne wobbling, and when China busts through the tech blockade, their cushy days are toast. They'll be begging for a peasant's life and won't even get it. Vance's vice presidential gig is pure leg-hugging, a dignity swap for Trump's coattails. And this political chancer dreaming of taking the reins in 4 years is laughable. Even if he's content as Trump's puppet, strings pulled from afar, the U.S. under their clown show won't win over voters after 4 more years of this. April 2025's 50% tariff threat already has stocks jittering, businesses wailing, Axios forecasting a 1.8% GDP hit if trade war explodes. Instead of raging at China's trade dominance, he'd do well to look after America's own rural crowd, the Rust Belt workers, the redneck farmers. Check if their factories are shuttered, their farm loans overdue, not just flap his gums on TV. Vance rode hillbilly elegy to the top, climbing over the backs of the struggling, only to perch up high and jeer at peasants like it's a punchline. The nerve of this turncoat leaves a sour taste. If he had a shred of decency, he'd fight for the American heartland's real woes, not pick fights halfway around the globe.